Chairman. Ambassador Froman, I want to thank you for your fine work and your team, and also want to thank your team for bringing negotiating text over to my office for review and answering a lot of questions about our negotiating position and our interlocutors as well. So it was very helpful, and I hope to continue to do so. I want to talk about China for a moment. Since the third plenum, the Chinese leadership have consistently talked about how the market will play a greater role, and yet their government actions seem to belie this statement, particularly with anti-monopoly law and other elements that they're using to create discriminatory practice. So what is the administration's strategy for 2015 to deal with this? Can you give us some insights? I know we have JCCT, SNED, and so forth, high-level negotiations, but what are we really doing to try to get to the bottom of all this?
Well, we have all those issues very much on the table, as you said, and you're absolutely right that if you read the third plenum statements, there are a number of positive comments out there about letting the market play a greater role. And part of what we're doing, whether it's on their pushing on the way they look at technology, intellectual property rights enforcement, forced localization, the application of their anti-monopoly law, or the liberalization of various sectors, we are pressing them to take actions that are consistent with their own words in the third plenum. One of the areas we're doing that through is the bilateral investment treaty negotiations, where we expect that this year they will give us a so-called negative list. And the importance of the negative list is that it means that China will open up its economy for various activities, except for things that are specifically regulated on that negative list. So if the negative list is very long, then they're not terribly serious about opening their economy. If it's short and targeted, then it will help reinforce reform within China, and that's certainly something that we want to encourage.
And do you feel like we're making progress in narrowing it down on that list?
We have not yet seen the list. They're planning, they've told us they will be giving us the first version of that list, or the first part of this year.
First part of this year, okay. Congratulations on getting a little bit of a breakthrough at APEC on ITA. Can you give us a little indication of the status in Geneva now on the actual tariff reductions?
Well, that breakthrough with China allowed us to restart the negotiations in Geneva. This is an agreement that will cover $1 trillion of trade. It's estimated to add $190 billion to the global economy and support 60,000 additional jobs in the U.S. We are now pressing the parties to try and reach closure on it. I think there's a fundamental dispute between Korea and China over various products, and we're encouraging China to show some flexibility and to try and bring closure to this.
Last year, I asked you about the Jones Act and the administration's position on maintaining our policy with regard to the Jones Act. Is that still the administration's position?
It is. There are a number of parties who are interested in expanding access to our maritime services. This has always been a sensitive issue for us, and we made that clear.
I appreciate that. With regard to shrimp imports into the United States, Malaysia and Vietnam have been problematic with regard to subsidies that they use, and we feel down on the Gulf Coast that this creates unfair competition. So in the context of our negotiations in TPP, I hope we will be addressing these issues as well. I know we have a lot of work to do with Malaysia and Vietnam. And finally, as my time's running down, the investor-state dispute settlement mechanism, this is very important for a number of our industries, the energy sector in particular. Could you give me a little indication of where we are with that in negotiations?
Sure. The purpose of investor-state is to give Americans abroad the same kind of protections that we provide under U.S. law, under our Constitution, to domestic and foreign investors in the U.S. And the U.S. has been at the leading edge of reforming ISDS, updating it, upgrading it, to make sure it's absolutely clear that governments can regulate in the public interest. We've closed various loopholes that we believe have been subject to abuse. We've raised certain safeguards, added additional safeguards about dismissing frivolous claims, being able to award attorneys' fees, opening it up and making it more transparent so that civil society organizations and others can file briefs and see what the result is. But we think that fundamentally it is important that the 23 million Americans who work for firms that have investment abroad have the same kind of protections that we provide here in the United States.
I thank you. And with the final seconds, just give assurances that the Trade and Services Agreement is still the top priority as well.
It is a top priority, and we're making good progress, and we hope this will be a very productive year in that regard.
Thank
Thank
you. I yield back.